Hello, my name is Marcello Moino, and I'm one of the assistant superintendents in the Langley School District. In this presentation, we will discuss the middle and secondary boundary change process in the RE Mountain region and in the Smith region. Specifically, this relates to the new Smith Middle and Smith Secondary schools slated to be opened in September 2027. As we gather today to continue our work to inspire all of our learners to reach their full potential, we acknowledge that we do so on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Matsqui, Kwantlen, Katzie, and Semiahmoo First Nations. Even though we are going through the boundary change process, in Langley we want to make sure that we communicate to our community that the well-being of our students and the well-being of our community matter greatly. And so while this is a process, we make sure in Langley that we really do listen to what the people have to say, because at the end of the day, we are a system of students and learners. Currently, this is a map of what exists in terms of our catchments. You'll notice in blue at the top, that is the catchment for Yorkson Creek Middle, and in green, you will see the catchment for Peter Ewart Middle. All elementary schools and middle schools on the Willoughby Slope all go to RE Mountain Secondary at present. To clarify, you can see then that Donna Gabriel Robbins, Langley Meadows, and RC Garnett, along with some students from Josette Dandurand, go to Peter Ewart Middle, and students from Lynn Fripps, Richard Bullpitt, Willoughby, as well as some students from Josette Dandurand go to Yorkson Creek Middle. And again, both middle schools then have students going to RE Mountain Secondary. In terms of the growth in the RE Mountain region, you can see then in September 2021, when Donna Gabriel Robbins Elementary opened, you see the sizes of each school, and by June 2024, you again see the rapid growth that occurred in each of the schools, elementary, middle, and secondary. Finally, in September 2025, you can see with the opening of Josette Dandurand Elementary, the population of some elementary schools did fall. At the same time, the growth in other elementary schools has continued, and the growth in the middle and secondary schools has also continued. When we look at growth in the Langley School District as a whole, we can see that that growth over the last several years, since 2022 at least, has been very much focused on the Willoughby Slope, with at least half of the growth happening in the district occurring on the Willoughby Slope. Specifically looking at the two middle schools, you can see how Peter Ewart and Yorkson Creek, both in September 2021, opened at 770 students and 674 students respectively, and by September 2027 are projected to grow to 1,147 students and 1,146 students respectively. Again, rapid growth in a very short period of time. When we look at RE Mountain Secondary, again, we can see very rapid growth. The first number, 1,698 in September 2021, that is for non-international students. The second number includes the international students that were at the school at the time. You'll see that over the course of the last several years, that number of ISP students has fallen quite dramatically, as the district has allowed current students who are international students to remain, but they have not replaced those students who are graduating, simply because of the growth on the Willoughby Slope. And so by September 2027, you'll see that the projected growth of RE Mountain Secondary is 2,922 students. Again, incredibly rapid growth from where it started in September 2021 on this graph. As you can imagine, there are definitely current challenges. We want to focus on the challenges at the middle and secondary schools, since the opening of Josette Dandurand Elementary in September 2025 did relieve some of the pressures at the elementary level. In terms of secondary schools, you can imagine finding adequate space for increasing division in classes, especially for unique elective classes, has been a challenge. And certainly finding adequate locations for portables at both sites has also been a challenge. At middle school, finding outdoor play spaces has certainly been something that the administration of each school has worked on. Meeting collective agreement language with that rapid growth has also been a challenge. And of course, settling families in. If, for example, a middle school is full at a certain grade, students then have gone to the other middle school on the Willoughby Slope. And finally, with that many students in such small spaces, pickup and drop-off in terms of traffic congestion has been a challenge that the schools have worked to solve. Those challenges have created many creative solutions. So obviously, with that growth of students, we have had to add portables, and we have found, again, creative ways to do that. We've also added modular bills to elementary schools, specifically at Lynn Fripps and Richard Bulpit elementary schools. We've worked with the township on portable location and outdoor sports and play spaces. We staggered the bell schedule at RE Mountain and at Peter Ewart Middle to try to separate the arrival and departure of families at both schools, especially being on the same site. In the meantime, the district has worked with the ministry to come up with another solution, and that is the building of Smith Middle and Smith Secondary Schools. The planned opening of both schools is for September 2027. At Middle, this will create 900 new spaces for students. At Secondary, this will create 1,900 new spaces for students. This is an unprecedented project in education history in BC in terms of the size and the dollar value of both projects, both schools being built at the same time on the same site. Please note that the district has begun the process for naming both schools, and that recently closed. Again, names were submitted to trustees, and trustees are currently considering all submissions. In terms of this current map of middle catchments on the Willoughby Slope, some key questions that the district would like the community to consider. With the new Smith Middle and Secondary Schools opening, how will middle and secondary catchment boundaries change? Again, with a new secondary school, you can imagine that the existing Willoughby Slope will have to be split into two. In terms of middle catchments, knowing that there will then be 3 middle schools feeding into 2 secondary schools, again, as you can imagine, we will have to be creative in terms of how we do that. Second question, how will the 2 new Smith schools impact the current configuration of elementary feeder schools? Again, with 7 elementary schools feeding into 3 middle schools, the district again will be looking for feedback and for some different solutions as to how to best do that. And finally, the third question, what priorities should the district consider when making the above decisions? This is where we very much rely on your feedback. As an example, during the consultation for Josette Dandurand Elementary, the district learned how important before and after school care was to families. And as a result, the district made that a top priority as we were coming up with then solutions as to what the opening of Josette Dandurand Elementary would look like. Please note the following boundary change process and timeline. Already in December 2025, the district met with the RE Mountain family of school administrators to make sure we shared this information with them. That way, when you had questions for them, they would be able to answer them. From January to April 2026, we look to host parent meetings on the Willoughby Slope for parents and for the general community. We will be collecting questions and concerns for consideration. And the email address to send all feedback is, as you see on the screen, feedback@sd35.bc.ca. Please note that all feedback will be read and reviewed. We will then share that feedback in draft with impacted communities. So the plan then is, in terms of that January to April timeline, from January to roughly mid-February, that will be the first phase or first round of consultation. We'll then look at the feedback, come up with some options, share those with impacted communities so that by roughly mid-February to spring break roughly, We will hope to then have a second round of consultations to then share what some of those narrowed options are. Again, that way, by being more specific, we can get more specific feedback. But please note at the same time that the feedback you give now will impact the feedback in that second round of consultation. Finally, in December 2025 and ongoing, we're going to continue to meet with district staff to discuss feedback, to discuss impact, to discuss supports and boundary change options before presenting to the Langley School Board. The goal is for April 2026. In terms of specifics for the round one dates, please take a note of the school that's nearest to you. You're certainly welcome to come to one or all if you prefer. These dates have been communicated with schools, and schools will be communicating these, if they haven't already, in newsletters. Please note you can find these dates on the district website as well. So some considerations that the district takes into account when looking at boundary changes. We are very much concerned and take into account where current Langley students live in terms of catchments and how they will be affected by boundary change. We also look at current Langley students who attend the schools within the affected catchments. We look at preschool age children residing in the catchment area to help us with projections so that we don't have to be making changes again in 2 or 3 years, unless of course a new school is being built. We also very much rely on your feedback for local knowledge of where housing is being built. And we also use district staff who also are very much connected to the local community to help us with some of that information. We look at major roads and natural boundaries, and we do our best to take those into consideration when drawing boundaries. We look at minor roads, safe walk routes, transportation, choice program location, the overall family of schools, local opinions, which again, you will be a huge source for us, and finally, any other unique issues that may be relevant. In summary, there is an increasing enrollment in the Arrie Mountain region, and that continues to impact spaces in schools. There have been creative allocation of spaces, portables, and modulars, and these have been the main ways to create space. The good news is the ministry, working with the district, has announced the creation and the building of Smith Middle and Smith Secondary Schools. They are expected to be completed for September 2027 and will create, again, many additional spaces at both middle and secondary in the area. The catchment changes for middle and secondary schools will need to occur then as a result of these two bills. This will impact where students transition to and from in terms of elementary and middle schools. The district then again will propose changes based on location of current and future student homes. And the goal will be to create catchment boundaries so that all students will be able to attend school in their appropriate catchment. While all of these will be taken into account, please know that there are many considerations that are taken into account, and we try to balance all of them while making decisions that are best both for the future of the district as well as taking the impact of families into account. And so finally, this is again the most important part perhaps of the whole presentation, is ensuring that we get your questions and feedback. You'll see the email address there on the screen, feedback@sc35.bc.ca. And again, I don't want to emphasize this. I want to make sure you hear very loud and clear. The district does read all the feedback and it takes into account what we do. For example, in the last consultation for Josette Danderan Elementary, in the second round, the district shared 3 different options. And because of the feedback that came in that second round, we then actually found a hybrid option that ended up meeting the needs, certainly not of every individual, but I think the vast majority of the community. And so with that, please know that the first round of feedback you give us will have a huge impact to what options we share with you. And then those options, you'll have a second chance to give feedback to help us make sure we get it as right as we possibly can. With that, again, on behalf of the Langley School District, we thank you for taking the time to review this presentation, to listen to the information, and of course, to give us feedback to help us get this as right as possible. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.